Fast forward to the late 90s when the internet started to take off and we moved from a dial-up connection to a new system called ADSL, asynchronous digital subscriber line. The broadband and your voice were joined on the same line and both sent at the same time without affecting each other. Before, if you dialed into CompuServe or AOL, the line was in use for that sole purpose. Anyone calling in would get an engaged tone, and if anyone picked the phone up they would get squeaks and squeals of data in their ear, and an upset person whose newsfeed had corrupted characters in it. When you plug your router into the telephone socket you use a filter, and this filter splits the high-pass signal and low-pass signal, effectively splitting your calls from your data. With SMPF, Shared Metallic Path Facility, broadband, you could have your broadband with provider A and your calls with provider B. In the exchange, your line would terminate into a filter and the call signal would go one way and the data signal another way. This was the first incarnation of ADSL broadband as we know it. Speeds when launched were an amazing 500 kilobits per second, 163 times slower than your 80 megabits per second service, but still 1,706 times faster than your 300 bits per second modem. Once this technology started to gain ground, then the speeds got faster and faster until they topped out at 24 megabits per second. MPF, Metallic Path Facility, also known as LLU, Local Loop Unbundled. With deregulation came the ability for other companies to place their own data lines into exchanges. Similar in design to SMPF, the only difference was that the broadband and line were provided by the same company. In this scenario, the broadband and line would still be filtered in at your house then, and the exchange would actually stay in the same signal and go across the network provider's data lines into their own data centers. The downside of using copper from the exchange to the green box to your house is the drop in the speed. If your house was about 10 miles from the exchange and with a green box between, by the time the signal reached your house the speed would have dropped drastically, as opposed to someone whose house is only 2 miles from the exchange who would experience quicker speeds. With development technology advanced to the next stage and superfast fiber to the cabinet, FTTC. This raised the speed of the broadband's throughput speed up to a maximum of 80 megabits per second. This saw the advancement of the infrastructure in the ground by adding fiber optic cables from the exchange into the street-side green cabinets. You may have seen 2 green cabinets in your road, one with grills and larger in size to its neighbor. The smaller one would contain all the copper connections to the house in the road and back to the exchange. The larger containing the switches and fiber optic cables. Your house would still be served by a copper cable to the smaller green cabinet. From there it would be either split, SMPF, or stay as a single connection, MPF, and be joined to the broadband connection in the larger green cabinet. The benefits of this service was the fiber optic does not lose as much speed as the copper cable and thus provide a faster broadband to your house. You would still have the same issue with speed loss depending on the distance from the green box to your house, but in general you could expect an average speed of 67 megabits per second depending on the service taken. As you can see from the graph, the speed the internet arrived at the green box was far faster than on the copper network. You may live close to the green box and get nearly 80 megabits per second, but a house a mile down the road may only get 50 at best. Coming in part 3, let there be light.